Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to continue my Ultimate Hero Guide series, this time focusing on the Little Green Midget Jedi Grandmaster Yoda. In this guide we'll cover the basics of Yoda, his health and regeneration stats, his weapon of choice, each of his individual abilities, and the star cards that I like to use for both Galactic Assault and the Hero game modes. We will then dive into some general gameplay tips for both of these modes, and then finish off with some characters to watch out for whilst you're playing as Yoda. So we can start off with Yoda's health and regeneration stats. Yoda sits at 700 base health, which is on the lower end of lightsaber heroes in the game, tied with Darth Maul. And he also has 250 health regeneration, which is the standard amongst majority of the lightsaber heroes in the game. His weapon of choice is his iconic green lightsaber, which deals 125 damage from the front, or 150 damage when hitting an enemy from behind, which that is enough to one-hit kill any regular trooper except for the heavy. Yoda's swing speed and lunge distance are both the lowest of all the saber heroes, thus the best way to utilise Yoda is to get up very close and personal, using his small size to your advantage in order to sneak up on some unsuspecting B1 droids. Yoda's blocking stamina is probably amongst the highest in the game. However, his swing attacking stamina is quite low, and thus it is imperative that you manage this stamina as best as you can, using your dashes and dodges to avoid danger while your stamina recharges. This recharge of stamina takes roughly 2 seconds after you have stopped swinging or blocking. So now that we have covered the basics, we can move on to his abilities, starting with the left ability, which is called Unleash. This is a force push style ability that works as his blaster or lightsaber blocking ability, where holding down the block button, L2 for the PlayStation 4, will charge the ability up whilst you're blocking incoming blaster fire, but this is not the case for lightsaber swings. Pressing L1 will then activate the ability that will knock over enemies that are caught within the radius, which is a 45-degree cone in front of Yoda, and the damage and both push distance are increased the more the ability is charged up. The base damage is 110 with a short push distance, whilst fully charged up it will deal 190 damage, which is enough to one-shot all infantry except for the heavy, and it also has a much larger push distance. Keep in mind, however, that this Unleash ability does not block incoming explosive damage, so you have to be aware of that when coming up against an enemy with explosives such as trip mines, grenades, alternate fires, and things like that. So now we have Yoda's middle ability, which is called Presence. Activating this ability gives Yoda 150 temporary bonus health, and can also give all friendly allies within its radius 100 bonus health. It's best to activate Presence before entering a fight, since the animation is quite slow, which leaves you open to damage for a short time. The extra health means that you are able to take 400 points of damage without losing any of your original base health pool, which makes you much harder to kill than some of the other lightsaber heroes. This ability should be activated as often as you possibly can to greatly increase your survivability, as well as that of your teammates. Last but not least, we have Yoda's right ability, which is called Dash Strike. This sends Yoda forward several meters very quickly, allowing you to hit any enemies directly in front of you, and it deals 85 damage currently. The other great part about this ability is that it is able to damage lightsaber heroes through their block, making it an excellent tool to use against other saber villains in a 1v1 situation. I actually believe the damage stat is currently bugged and should deal 125 damage like his base lightsaber does, which is a reason why Yoda can be underwhelming at times in the hero game modes. However, it's still a great ability that you should use as often as possible. The Dash Strike can also be used to escape a sticky situation, as it propels Yoda forward much faster than his standard sprint speed would. So it can be a great defensive ability as well. So now that we've covered all of the abilities, let's move on to the star cards I use. Firstly, we'll start with Galactic Assault, and the first card I would recommend is called Feel the Force. This card gives Yoda and all allies 60 extra bonus health from Presence, allowing Yoda to gain 210 extra health or 160 for his allies. This increases the damage threshold for Yoda before he loses any permanent health from 400 up to 460. To go along with this, the second card I recommend to boost his presence ability is called Size Matters Not. This card can be difficult to explain, but hopefully this will be a clear explanation of it. So with this card, 50% of the bonus health that you lose during presence will be added back onto your base health when the ability runs out, which heals you much like passive health on kill does. As an example, let's say you have 300 health and you activate presence with this card equipped. During its active time you take 150 points of damage, which means after the presence depletes you will gain half of that back. So that's 75 HP, bringing you up to a total of 375, plus whatever other HP you gained from getting kills with your health on kill ability at the same time. This greatly increases your chances of survival in Galactic Assault, and whilst the cooldown of presence is increased by 13 seconds as a result, Yoda's extremely small size and fast movement can compensate for that extra cooldown. The final card I like to recommend for Galactic Assault is called Jedi Mentor, which gives Yoda 8% damage reduction against everything: blaster fire, lightsaber strikes, explosives, you name it. Any damage reduction you can get is most welcome in GA, thus this is one of the cards that I like to use. But there is one other card you could swap out Jedi Mentor for, which is known as Agility. This gives Yoda one extra dash strike, but it increases the recharge time of his dashes by 10%. So either of those two cards that I mentioned at the end works extremely well, and it's just a personal preference which card you choose. So feel free to try both of those out, or any of those four cards in combination, and let me know what works best for you. For the hero game modes, I usually keep Feel the Force, and I usually use Agility, and I'll swap out Size Matters Not or Jedi Mentor for Opposing the Dark Side. So this card just gives Yoda 16 extra lightsaber damage against villains, which means you can deal 141 damage from the front or 166 damage from behind. As Yoda is one of the weaker heroes in the game, for heroes versus villains at least, any way of boosting his base damage is definitely extremely useful. So finally, we'll move on to some general gameplay tips, and of course I like to start with Galactic Assault. The first and most important tip is to use Yoda's small size to your advantage. He is able to sneak up on enemies much easier since he is much harder to spot, but in order to best utilize this tactic you also need to be keeping his lightsaber turned off as often as possible when you're not in combat, which goes for all of the saber heroes. A good combo that you can use with Yoda is to swing once and then immediately use his dash strike as a follow-up. This is a 2-hit combo that can 1-hit kill all troopers and I think some reinforcements as well, but it also keeps you on the move constantly, which has a couple of benefits. The first benefit is that it's much harder to hit a target that is still on the move, and secondly it allows you to close your gap onto the next enemy after you've killed one. As I said earlier, it is very important to get up close and personal with enemies with Yoda because of his slow swing speed and small lunge distance. So you need to practice being pretty much on top of enemies before you swing your saber. Other heroes such as Rey and Anakin with larger lunge distances don't need to worry about this too much, but it's a tip that's purely reserved for Yoda. One final tip I have in dealing with heavy troopers and reinforcements especially is to do with his Unleash. Since it doesn't actually deal enough damage to one-hit kill them, even fully charged, it can sometimes be useful to aim his Unleash so that the reinforcement or heavy will hit a rock or some other debris that will knock them over, but not knock them too far, so that you can easily close the gap on them and get one final swing on them to kill them. And using the dash strike to close that gap is also useful as well. So the maps I'd recommend choosing Yoda on in Galactic Assault are Kashyyyk, Naboo and Endor. The background sort of bushes and shrubbery and forest jungle environments are perfect for Yoda specifically talking about Kashyyyk and Endor, as he is able to dart between these two, this debris and shrubs and such, undetected, which allows you to more easily flank up and sneak up on your enemies. Since he is roughly the same height as a lot of those bushes and trees and stuff, it makes him very hard to spot until it's basically too late and they're on top of you. And he just blends into the forest jungle environment perfectly because of his coloration as well. I also recommend Naboo, since it is extremely close quarters with several choke points, which allows Yoda the opportunity to wall off of those objectives, especially the second phase, and make it almost impossible for the enemy team to push through. You're also able to buff your teammates and use his small stature to your advantage to play the objective and defend objectives better than most of the heroes in the game. So if you're not sure on what maps are best suited and what to choose Yoda on, these are the three I'd recommend you try out first. So now I'll move on to some tips for the hero game modes, starting with some lightsaber dueling tips mostly. Using his dash strike to whittle down enemy saber heroes' health is the best way to take them down, and using his speed to dash around them and get quick swings on them from the back before dashing again is highly recommended, as the biggest problem I see with Yoda players sometimes is that they will spam the swing button a little bit too much. Because of his slow animations, I don't recommend this at all, because they can be easily parried by other saber villains, and that will lead to a very, very quick death. So the best way to duel with Yoda is to reserve yourself to a single swing at once before either activating your block, dashing, using your dash strike ability, or just sprinting in order to either deal some quick damage or stop yourself from being damaged. Another tip in regards to his Unleash ability is that it is rarely fully charged up in the hero game modes, because your majority of the enemies you come up against are going to be saber villains. So you won't be able to get the full damage benefit from the card. However, you are able to use the push effect of Unleash to knock saber heroes over, and then you are able to get a quick dash or swing on them before they are able to recover. And because the ability is not fully charged, the push distance is much, much smaller, which means you can close the gap more easily before a villain can block or avoid your lightsaber. Of course, the best way to actually use Yoda in the hero game modes is as a support style hero, sticking with your teammates as much as possible, buffing them as much as possible, because he can definitely struggle in HPV, especially when you find yourself alone. Now, as for the heroes to avoid, the two to avoid most would be probably Vader and Dooku. Both of these characters are excellent duelists that are able to easily dispatch Yoda in a 1 versus 1 duel if they know what they're doing. So you must be very, very careful when you come up against either of these two, because you'll be at a significant disadvantage. Another hero I'd avoid is Iden, since her alternate fire can't be blocked by your Unleash, and her stun means that she is able to easily whittle down your health, especially if you combine that with another ability such as Vader's Choke or Dooku's Lightning Stun, which will knock you over. In saying that, there is one cool little counter you can use, especially against Dooku, and that is that his Unleash can block the Lightning Stun and actually send it back to Dooku, which will deal the damage and the knockdown effect that Dooku's Lightning Stun would have done to Yoda. So keep that in mind for when you're going up against a Dooku. But anyway, that's going to do it for this hero guide, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and took some good tips from it in order to improve your overall gameplay with Yoda. As always, like, share, comment on the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future guides or live streams. And with all of that done, I'll get out of here, and I shall see you all in the next video. Peace.